I am Mike Painter, the chaplain of Don't Tread on Indiana, and We the People of Brown County on Facebook. And our guest today is Dan Niederberger, who's running for the US Senate as a write-in candidate. That's a story he'll tell later, against Todd Young. And let's just get started. I want to let you all know a few things that I have found in recent months. If you haven't heard of the World Economic Forum, you need to check it out, because their motto is, by 2030 you will own nothing and you will be happy. Our FBI and our DOJ have been weaponized. Over 40 subpoenas for Trump supporters have gone out in recent weeks. They went into Mike Lindell's, actually to the Hardee's restaurant where he was sitting with his family, and took his cell phone with a warrant. This is out of control, and we can't let it continue. Marjorie Taylor Greene gave a video yesterday that was very interesting. Apparently, there's a new bill that's coming before Congress to where the President of the United States has no authority to fire any federal employee. Now think about that. Why would they do that? Because the red wave's coming. November 8th is important. You've got to get out and vote, and you need to write in Danny Niederberger against Todd Young. He is going to do a good job in Congress, I guarantee it. Now I want to talk about rallies, and this is where I get a little heated, but I'm not going to today. We have put out-of-pocket monies, lots of monies, hundreds of dollars, into 2 rallies. We have 400 people in We the People of Brown County that are from Brown County, and yet the majority of the people that come from far away. Far away. Lafayette, Lisa Kingma, and give her a look at Kingma Creations, patriotic shirts, sweatshirts, and decals. But we got to get more people to these things. The American people are lazy. They're not getting off their butts and coming to these events so we can show strength in numbers. So get off your butts and join us October 15th at 5181 State Road 46 East, Nashville, Indiana, 47448. All right, with that said, Dan, why don't you tell us who Dan Niederberger is?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in Westfield, Indiana, and Westfield is not quite what it is now. It was a little less populated. The population has almost doubled since I grew up there. But I come from a very big family. I have four older sisters, an older brother, and 2 younger brothers. So pretty big family. Mm-hmm. Went to Westfield Public Schools my entire youth and ended up going to Purdue University. Graduated with 2 degrees, one in accounting and one in management. After graduating from Purdue, I spent 2 years in Indianapolis working as a portfolio accountant for a registered investment advisor, a small company. But when I started there, my role was to look after and account for and reconcile about $750 million every single day. After that, I spent 2 years down in Miami, Florida. I took a position as a fund accountant for Concise Capital Management, small hedge fund, about 10 people. When I started there, my role was just to take over the fund accounting department, but eventually I took over the accounting and operations departments as a whole. I moved back to Indiana in January of 2019, and to my surprise, the firm actually kept me on. They wanted to keep me on the whole way. So for the past 4 years now, I've been working from home, working remote, running the operations and accounting departments for this hedge fund.
We got some issues we want to talk about here. What are your thoughts on the rights of the unborn?
I am pro-life for the whole life, from conception till natural death. And I take that stance because you have to protect life where it begins. And life begins at conception. And I know there's a lot of people who debate that issue, but for me it's all about protecting life of the unborn child. I will never ever sponsor legislation based off legislating a woman's body. It's all to protect the unborn child.
Todd Young has authorized more spending than all the other 99 senators in the Senate,
including Bernie Sanders.
And Elizabeth Warren. Think about it. So what would you suggest that we do to cut our government debt?
Yeah, we're running about 30 plus trillion dollars in debt, and at some point we're going to have to pay that back. Now, who's going to pay that back? It's not just our kids, it's our grandkids and it's their kids. I mean, you take a look, it's taken a long time, decades, to get 30 trillion in debt. It's going to take decades to get out of it. But you bring up a good point. Where do you cut the money? Well, just look at what we're spending on. Because I hear a lot of people say, well, we should just raise taxes on the rich. Even if you tax the rich 100%, the top 1%, 100% of their income, you would not be able to fund Social Security for more than 2 years. So it's not a problem of raising revenues, it's a problem of cutting spending. And so where you have to cut spending is really where the most waste is occurring. Take a look at all these federal agencies that are redundant. You have an agency at the state level, and then it repeats itself at the federal level. Just off the top of my head, there are two that I can name, the EPA and the Department of Education. Every single state has a Department of Education and an EPA. And then it's redundant at the federal level. Why? What do the federal level do? I mean, you can ask anybody, any state, any person located in the United States will tell you their state Department of Education does a heck of a lot better job than the federal Department of Education. So let's take a look at cutting some of these federal agencies that are redundant, that you have waste. Let's look at all this government spending. You know, in the coronavirus stimulus bills, we're just now scratching the surface. It's $6, $7, $8 trillion we spent in a short period of time, and we're scratching the surface on how much fraud was in there. We need to actually be accountable with our spending. It's not just, hey, let's print some money and throw it out there. Let's make sure the money is going where it should be going, because I've seen reports $1 or $2 trillion was fraud in that coronavirus stimulus bills.
Wow. Your thoughts on the Second Amendment and constitutional carry in Indiana?
Absolutely. So I'm glad you asked this, because it separates people a whole lot when you get into the details of the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed. That is key. When you take a look at what the founders actually wrote on the Second Amendment, that's really important. It shapes the narrative. It really does. Because what they saw with the Second Amendment is it's not, okay, you're allowed to own firearms. No, these are rights that are found in nature that are God-given and the government recognizes. So the right that they model this after is the right to self-defense. And in nature, you find self-defense everywhere. You have a right to defend yourself. That's where the Second Amendment really comes from. And it's absolutely key. When you go into background checks, really look into what a background check is, because all it is a credit check, a license check, an educational background check. And sure, that's good for the company selling you the firearm to make sure you're actually going to pay them with the credit check, but it doesn't tell you if the gun is going to be used for a good or bad purpose. And so when people talk about we need to expand background checks, well, it's a false sense of security, because it doesn't really do anything.
What are your thoughts on Barack's crown jewel, the Affordable Care Act?
This was probably one of the worst ideas that they've ever had. Instead of letting the free market decide letting people decide what they want to do in the free market, it just created a government institution to mandate everything. So what it does is it pools high risk, low risk, and moderate risk all into the same group. So the principle is this: if you have say you went to a class and you had your exam, it wasn't based off if you got an A or an F or a C. What it was is the average of the class. Well, those people who otherwise would have gotten A's that now get the average, for the next exam, they're not going to study as hard. For the people who got F's that got their grade boosted because they now get moved to an average, well, they're not going to study as hard either, because they're going to freeload. What it does is it reduces incentive. And that's what we see with the Affordable Care Act. Number one, it's not affordable, but it reduces all incentive, and it just mandates everything. And that's really, quite honestly, anti-American. It's anti-free market. And that's what America was built on, is the free market system. So I would love, love, love to see the Affordable Care Act repealed.
Nice. And I know when we first met you, you talked about this, that you're in favor of these term limits.
Absolutely. I believe in a 3-2-2 term limit system, and that's 3 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, and obviously 2 terms in the presidency. And surprisingly, this is the one that I get pushback on the most. And I mean, I understand where people come from, but a lot of the pushback I get is these people have a great senator or a great congressman in there, and they say they represent us well, they're in great communication with us, they always get back to us whenever we call their office. We don't want them to be forced to leave. Okay, well, for as many great representatives there are, how many bad ones are there? When you take a look at the re-electability rate of incumbents, it's 90+%. These people are serving as their careers in government, and that's not what it's meant to be. No, term limits is not going to solve all the problems, but it is a check and balance on the system of governance we have.
Right on. Illegal immigration.
Look, you said it exactly right, illegal immigration. There is a way to come into this country. Is it a hard process? Absolutely. It takes time. It takes 10 years. I work with and I know plenty of immigrants who have done it the correct way, and I have no issue with that. Where a lot of people have issues and where I take an issue is you come over the border illegally. You don't go through the right process. Look, there is an asylum process that we have. There are processes that we have to expedite the immigration process if you fall under that jurisdiction or those categories. But the real thing is there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And if you just come over the border without going through the process, you are essentially skipping the line of everybody who's trying to do it the right way, and that's not fair, or is it right? The best way to describe it, and this gets used nowadays so often because of President Trump, but build a big wall with a big gate in front of it. Mm-hmm. And we let people come through that gate, but you don't let people climb over the walls.
Right on. Stacking the Supreme Court.
Look, it's been done in the past. It's been, what was it, 1930s since the last time the Supreme Court was expanded or contracted. But I think 9 is the perfect number. Okay, it's an odd number, which means no matter what, you're going to get a ruling unless there's a vacancy on the court. You'll get a 5-4 ruling in a worst case scenario. So you will have an answer on a case that a lot of people are interested in. I like that it's an odd number. I like that it's 9. I don't think we need to expand the court, especially for the purposes of what are the liberals and the socialists saying now. Well, we're not getting our way, so we need to stack it with the people who are on our side. US Senate is the race that I'm running, and that's who confirms the Supreme Court nominees. The president nominates them, but it's up to the Senate to confirm them or reject them. What I look for in a Supreme Court justice is not somebody who's conservative or liberal. What I look for is, are you going to abide by the Constitution? And are you going to use the Constitution in its original framework and the Federalist Papers, which describe what the purpose of the Constitution is and more background on the amendments? Are you using that to frame your rulings? That's what I look for in a Supreme Court justice.
Well, they also appoint federal judges, and as you know, one of our 50 Republican senators did not show up for the vote,
correct,
which could have cost us a really hardcore lefty judge.
Yeah.
Fortunately, 2 Democrats didn't show up, so she was not confirmed. But that would be Todd Young. He was rubbing elbows with liberals and people at Purdue. Okay, sorry, got a little carried away there. All right, election integrity.
Yes. So, since the 2020 election, I mean, this really took off in the 2020 election, but there have been cries beforehand. I mean, I can't tell you, the first presidential election I was allowed to vote in was 2012. And even then, I was hearing stories about deceased people voting and ballots being dropped off in boxes and ballot harvesting. And in 2016, that really ramped up a lot, but in 2020, we all heard it. And the real big issue is that if you don't do anything, it just allows what's going on to keep going on. And so what I can say is this: there are two things we can do, that really ramp down on this. Number one is that we can conduct a forensic audit of every single state prior to accepting the results of an election, prior to certifying the results. Number two, we can ban mail-in balloting, and not to be confused with absentee balloting. So absentee balloting is where you, the voter, go to your county clerk and you say, hey, I would like an absentee ballot. The county clerk verifies you are who you are, and they give you one ballot for you. Mail-in balloting is where the county clerk just sends out ballots to everybody and anybody, regardless of if they're registered, regardless of if they live at a certain address. They just print ballots and hand them out like candy. The real issue with that is that there's no way to make sure that the people who are registered to vote are the ones voting. There's no way to have any integrity with that. And if you are 18 years old and you register to vote, you have all responsibility to go to the voting booth and vote. I'm not trying to take away your ability to go and vote, but there's a process so that it's fair. So if you can't make it on election day, you have the opportunity to actually go to the county clerk, they verify you are who you are, and you get your ballot and you're able to vote, and it counts all the same. That's a proper way to do it. That's a reasonable way to do it. But just mailing out ballots to anybody and everybody, that's not reasonable and that's not proper.
What else can you add to this video? Anything off the top of your head?
Yeah, if you would like, I can share my story about what happened in the primary.
Ah, yes. Please do.
Yeah. So for people
explain the rules.
Exactly.
And then go into what they did.
For people that don't know, we attempted to take on Todd Young in the primary in May. And there are 3 races where you need to gather signatures. It's US Senate, Governor, and President. And this is in Indiana. Those 3 races, you need to gather 500 signatures from registered voters in each congressional district in the state. So there are 9 congressional districts, 4,500 total signatures. Now, those signatures have to be verified by the counties, and then you have to turn them into the state. And what happened with us is that we turned in about 600 signatures in each congressional district to be verified by the counties in which the people lived. And I'll give you an example. In the 9th congressional district, we turned in about 600 signatures, and 4 days before the deadline to turn them in, we got all the verified signatures back, and we had about 120 thrown out. They can be thrown out because you didn't write down your correct name. You didn't write down your correct registered address, the address you're registered to vote. Or people just can't read your handwriting. There's various reasons that signatures can be thrown out. But we ended up with 482 signatures 4 days before the deadline to turn in the signatures. And I called my contact down in the 9th district and I said, hey, we're about 20 signatures short. Can you gather some more signatures before the deadline? And she goes, hey, I have 30 signatures sitting right here. I just never turned them in because I thought we had gotten 600, we were good. I said, okay, turn them in. I'll go down and grab them in the next couple days. In the 9th congressional district, we ended up with 507 verified signatures. So just to let you know, just because you turn in 600 doesn't mean you're going to get above that 500 mark. It takes a lot. Marion County is where we ran into trouble. And in Marion County, what happened is I turned in signatures on January 13th. And then, we were turning in signatures throughout the state. I go back on January 31st, turn in more signatures, and I ask for my signatures back. And they say, well, they're not ready yet. I said, okay, all right, we have the deadline to get them into the state was February 4th. So we had a few days. So I said, okay, February 1st was the deadline to get them into the counties. And February 1st, I was in Fort Wayne in Allen County in the 3rd District turning in signatures there. And I had other people turn in signatures that morning in Marion County. Well, February 2nd, I go into Marion County and I ask for my signatures back, and they say, well, they're not ready yet. I said, okay, we still have a couple days to get them into the state. February 3rd was that day of that big winter storm, and it hit Indianapolis pretty bad, and so everything was shut down. February 4th is the day, again, you had to get everything into the state. So I gather all of my signatures that have been verified, and I head down to Marion County, and when I get there, we get notice that their county clerk's office isn't open. So we walk into the state, and we hand in 8 congressional districts worth of signatures. And I explained to them what happened in Marion County, and they said, we can't move our deadline. You know, it's in Indiana code. We cannot move the deadline. So your candidacy will be challenged, and you have to, when you go in front of the election division, the election board, you're going to have to state your case. And so that's what we did. And I'll tell you, on February 7th, the Monday after the deadline, I went into Marion County and I asked for my signatures back, and they said, well, they're not ready yet. And they stalled me for about 20 minutes before they reluctantly gave me my signatures back. On the back side of the signature form is where the county has to put 3 things. They have to put the number of verified signatures, they have to put the county clerk's signature, and the county seal to be able to prove that they were verified by the county clerk. And even if there are no verified signatures on the page, they have to put all 3 things. That way you can prove the county clerk looked at the page. Well, they also timestamp them when you turn them in to make sure you turned them in before the deadline. Well, as we're flipping through these signature pages, we're seeing that they were timestamped, they were turned in on time, but on the back, no verified count, no county clerk's signature, and no county seal. And when we get to the election division hearing and they ask for this, I hand them everything we had in Marion County, and it was a 4-person board, and all of them held in their hands the signature pages that we had that were timestamped. We turned them in on time, but again, no county clerk's signature on the back, no county seal. And what ended up happening is they kicked us off the ballot because, according to them, it didn't matter, because under state law, there is no state law that says that a county has to verify the forms you turn in, or they have to do so in a certain amount of time. And so they voted unanimously, it was a 4-0 decision, to kick us off the ballot. And so that's why we weren't in the May primary. Because I'll tell you, we traveled the state for 7 months, and it was grueling, it was hard work, but the amount of great people that we met across the state, it was phenomenal. I mean, I've never traveled the state of Indiana the way we traveled during that campaign, and it was just a phenomenal experience. But again, that's why we were kicked off the ballot in the primary.
All right, one more thing. Explain to them, whether it's a paper ballot or a machine, how to do a write-in candidate.
Absolutely. This is a write-in campaign. So when you get to the ballot, you will see the first race listed is the US Senate race, because it is the highest office in Indiana that is on the ballot for this November's election. So you will see the Republican name, you'll see the Democrat name, you will see the Libertarian name, and then you'll see an option that says write-in. And if you click the button for write-in, what happens is a keyboard pops up. And all you have to do is type in my name, Danny Niederberger, and that's it. The vote will count. So what it is under Indiana code, you do not have to spell my name correct. It just has to be a reasonable effort under Indiana code. So what I can tell you is that if you type in Danny, probably not going to work. If you type in Danny N, not going to work. If you type in Danny Cheeseburger, that is a reasonable effort at spelling my last name, and that should get the vote to us. So what happens is, to be a write-in, and this is a whole learning experience, believe me, but to be a write-in, you have to file with the state, which we did. And the state sends out a list of all official write-in candidates to all 92 counties in Indiana. So when the poll workers and the election officials get notified that there was a write-in selected, they look at what was typed in, and they compare it to the official list of write-in candidates. And if they can match 1-to-1, that person gets the vote.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So get out there and vote for Dan Niederberger, Niederberger.
Absolutely.
Dan Niederberger for US Senate. We got to send Todd Young packing. All right. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, Chairman, for being our producer. And thank you, Danny, for coming to the cabin.
Thank you so much.
God bless you, my friend.
Thank you.
Let's get her done.
Good job, Dan.
That was good.
Nervous.
You did fine.
You did great.
Once you got rolling, you did
Yeah.
Oh, Lord help me.